What we could do is have the AI take the transcript the moment that this call ends and then create a blog and upload that to our website. That can be completely automated with AI. And effectively, that's what we do. We help people turn a manual process into something that is completely automated, turning a business that has several pieces of software that are usually quite fragmented, that do different things such as invoicing or CRM systems, whatever that may be, and then integrate them. So you'd have fragmented pieces of software, connect them together through the API, do different processes, do different workflows, things that you would usually do manually are now automated. So it creates an integrated business rather than something that's fragmented. So we can transition a business out of being manual into a business that's automatic.
Hello, and welcome to the Randall Osché Podcast, where honest conversations take the lead. Each week, we sit down with entrepreneurs, artists, thinkers, and change makers to unpack how they got from there to here and what they learned along the way. Real stories, no filters, lessons earned through experience, so you can take what's useful and leave the rest. Whether you're tuning in during your commute, a workout, or while making dinner, we're glad you're here. So take a seat, relax, grab a cup of tea, and join in the conversation. Now, let's get into this week's episode.
Jake Hissit, welcome to the show. For the folks out there who don't know you yet, why don't you go ahead and take a brief moment and introduce yourself?
Yeah, good to be here, Randall. So my name's Jake Hissit. I'm the CEO of Stob.AI. And what we do is we build custom AI automation systems on the platform of make.com. So it's good to be here. It's morning time for me, and I guess it's getting into the bit of the evening time for you, Randall.
That it is. Appreciate you waking up early for us. Where out in the world do you happen to be at, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I came to live in Bangkok about 3 years ago. Not planned, just ended up here.
And where are you originally from?
Well, I'm actually originally from the UK, but before arriving in Bangkok, I was living in China for 4 years.
Okay, so UK, China, Bangkok.
More or less. Not quite so linear, but yeah.
We're leaving out a few stops, but appreciate you being here today. Appreciate you waking up early. I'm sure we'll get into Stob.AI, but I think one of the questions I want to lead with right off the bat is AI worth all the hype that it's getting right now for newcomers to the game who might be the boomers of the audience? No offense. What's the deal?
Yeah, it's a great question. So AI is all the hype, and deservedly so. You know, I've had conversations with people that want to make a conscious decision not to integrate AI into their workflows or their business or their way of working because they believe that it's a bit of a fad, that it's hype technology, that it's not all it's cracked up to be. But unfortunately, I don't think that that's the case. I think that it is very much what it's cracked up to be. So what we do at Stob.AI is we integrate AI into workflows and process on the platform of make.com. So the way that we do that is you have software within your business. That software has several APIs. Those APIs can connect to different pieces of software. And effectively, make.com is an automation platform. It exists in the middle of these different pieces of software. So there are other platforms that have existed for years. I think If This Then That was probably the first big one. And then Zapier, and now there's an absolute host of them, everything from like Gumloop, N8N, and make.com as well. And what makes N8N and make.com particularly interesting is that they're really cutting edge in terms of the capabilities and the technology that they enable everyday people to be able to use, but they're very simplistic in their design. So make.com in particular is really like a no-code platform. You don't need to be able to code to develop in AI.
Okay. So for my benefit, to make sure I'm tracking this correctly, and for the audience members, probably just my parents, who might not understand this, I'm going to try to reverse engineer what you just said. So organizations, large or small, even this podcast, I use multiple pieces of software. Software is computer programs that help us do things like record this podcast. I'm using Riverside.fm. That's a piece of software.
Right.
So in any size business, they use software to help run their organization. You know, if you're recording a podcast, like you're using Riverside.fm. If it's a large podcast and you have employees, you're using some sort of HR software, some sort of payroll software, some sort of, if you're selling to customers, you have a CRM system. So those are the different pieces of software that organizations leverage to run their business. Now, it's my understanding that how companies interact with that software is mostly like a manual process. It takes a human to type things into it. It takes a human to log into Riverside.fm, hit record like we're doing right now. But what you do to help business owners out is to leverage different AI tools, also software, to help automate some of those manual processes and connect some of those systems together to help the business run more effectively and efficiently. Did I get that correct?
That is absolutely correct. So I'm glad that you've mentioned that you're using Riverside FM as a piece of software, because Riverside FM has what they call an open API, an open application programming interface. So what that means is that when two pieces of software talk to each other, they talk to each other through this thing called the API. Riverside has an open API. So what that means is that we can extract the data from this podcast. So immediately that gives us opportunity to do different things. This voice recording has a transcript. It has text that we can write out. What we could do, both practically and theoretically, is we could have the AI take the transcript the moment that this call ends and then create a blog and upload that to our website. That can be completely automated with AI. And effectively, that's what we do. We help people turn a manual process into something that is completely automated, turning a business that has several pieces of software that are usually quite fragmented, that do different things such as invoicing or CRM systems, whatever that may be, and then integrate them into an integrated business. So you'd have fragmented pieces of software, connect them together through the API, do different processes, do different workflows. Things that you would usually do manually are now automated. So it creates an integrated business rather than something that's fragmented. So we can transition a business out of being manual into a business that's automatic.
Great. I'm tracking on that. I hope the listeners are too. The next part of this, I want to clarify. So now we've automated some manual processes. Our business is now running more effectively and efficiently, which is great. But what are the benefits of this? How does this help? If we're a for-profit organization, right, we want to maximize our profitability. And there's a couple ways to do that in my mind. Mostly, without getting too nuanced, there's two triggers you can pull: decrease expenses or increase revenue, right? Though I guess that's the ultimate benefit. But like you helping an organization integrate AI into their processes, what do they get out of that other than just that?
Well, there's two parts to that answer. So firstly, they get their time back. And then secondly, they don't have to use the tools. So the first part is because, well, I guess they're somewhat inextricably linked, but if you don't have to use the tool, then you've got your time, and that time acts as like a lever on your cash flow. If you've got more time, you've got more time, energy, that lever on your cash flow, which is effectively growth because there's a multiplier. So if we give you your time back, like an arbitrary number of 10 pieces of time, and you've got $100, you've got $1,000. But if you've got no time in your business and you're creating $1,000 and you've only got 2 units of arbitrary time, then you've only got $200. So we're effectively able to create that additional margin, that's growth, that scale in that business through removing those manual tasks that humans would usually have to do. See, most businesses, even in 2025, are stuck in the sort of AI as an assistant phase, okay, where we have to use ChatGPT. And what we really aim to do at Stob.AI is move businesses through the levels to become fully automated so that the business doesn't need a human to operate or needs less humans to operate, which enables the business to scale without increasing the headcount.
You had mentioned that they get their time back, and I've had a lot of bad bosses in my time, but one of the good ones earlier on in my career when he was coaching me and we were having our one-on-one meetings, he would always talk about higher value activities. Like, what are your high value activities? Are you doing them? And a lot of people get confused between, and I've mentioned on the podcast before, between being busy and being productive. So you probably eliminate some of that busy work that has to be done, but it's not necessarily producing anything, right? So the AI integrations that you help businesses with take care of some of that busy work that has to get done, that is important, but it might not necessarily be the highest value activity, the highest leveraged activity. So you eliminate, say, the 10 hours a week of the manual work. Now that business owner, that employee can invest that 10 hours, prospecting new deals or working on higher value deals or working on that project that they keep on punting till, next month, next quarter, next year, because they haven't just magically found the time to work on it, right?
Yeah, so this is the interesting thing, to loop back to the question about hype. More and more, it takes both the low value and the high value, the high impact activity. So that's really what I think that people should be aware of about AI, that it starts with a low impact activity, but as the technology progresses, it can do more and more high impact activities. So you mentioned there, which was like outreach or outreach, and maybe that's sales outreach or even customer service in a 2C setting, in a to consumer setting. AI has the capability to do that. And we're building machines that are fully AI led with RAG architecture. That's retrieval augmented generation, being able that this AI can fetch information from a database and give it to the customer in real time. So within seconds, that's already happening. We're already building those systems and those tools. And for sales outreach, there are several automated tools that people might use for sales outreach on email or LinkedIn, which is very common, except these tools don't have the capability to be super personalized. So you may be able to say, hi, insert token Randall, which is an automation, because the tool that we may use for email or LinkedIn might be able to take your first name, but the rest of the email is templated. What we can now do with an AI is we can download the information from your LinkedIn or your website and then customize even a template or have it freestyle an email to you based upon the information that was on your website or on your LinkedIn. We could go so far to have the AI read your website or your LinkedIn text and match your tonality. So when it writes the email, it sounds like you. Like, that's the capability that we have. I always say it's absolutely mind-blowing what you can do with a simple stack of software without even the ability to code. So mentioned before, you don't need to be able to write code to be able to do this in 2025. It sounds absolutely mind-blowing. It sounds unbelievable that we could generate content such as from this podcast, or we can sales outreach reading people's websites and LinkedIn profiles, but you don't need to code to be able to do that. There's two revolutions. We've been through the biggest technological revolution the world has ever seen, which is ChatGPT. Bigger than the iPhone. More people are probably using it. More people have become dependent on it for being able to think the answers. But the second revolution that's not quite as often talked about is the change in the software industry, that we've moved from these like big monolithic platforms such as like Salesforce or even HubSpot arguably into something where we can design a system that's very composable, where we can pick different pieces of software for different niches. Now, there is debate in the software industry. Sorry for the older audience out there. There's debate right now in the software industry about whether this is really true, because having lots of different pieces of software in your architecture often increase the price because you're using multiple different subscriptions. But the argument against that is that you're able to create something that's very precise in what it does. So full circle, yes, you can remove the low impact activities. However, you can also more and more do the high impact activity. What the AI isn't as good at is maybe long-term contextual thinking or something that requires a little bit of nuance and a human touch, because we're not logical creatures. We're both made up of a logical, rational choice and an emotion which is quite intangible, unquantifiable, and the AI is generally a psychopath. It doesn't yet quite understand how to interact with people on a human level, which is right now one of the few advantages that we as humans have over the AI.
Excellent. Thank you for that. I think the value of an activity like a ladder, right? There's always another rung up that you can do. And as long as you are taking care of, say there's 10 rungs on the ladder, right? You can climb and climb and climb, but the highest leveraged activity, the highest impacted activity are going to be the ones at the top. So the more activities that you can automate on that ladder, the more time that you have to invest in those higher impact is on that ladder. So how many podcast invites can you send out?
How many do you want? Do you want to do 500 a month?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it really depends. Like, there's two ways to approach it. So we really select projects. We've done some really cool stuff. So some projects, people come to us and they say, I need more leads. That's a great one. I need more leads is always a great place to start, because there's really only two reasons people need more leads. Firstly, they found something that's proven. They've got a proven sales process, but it takes time. I use this template. I reach out to these type of people, okay? And this generates leads. Now, that's a great job to automate, because it's like we know we're going to get results. But then the other way is that people feel like, okay, well, we don't have enough business. And I've noticed, especially in certain, how we'll say, traditional industries, especially in digital, not offline, so like social media agencies, they're struggling for leads because people are beginning to automate processes that before they would rely on humans to do. Writing social media copy or reaching out to people via LinkedIn is actually very easy to automate LinkedIn, and you don't need like a lot of AI to do it. Obviously, the more AI you have, the more customizable you might be able to make that outreach. I'd still recommend it because it's generally cheaper than a human once you've got it set up. There might be a higher upfront cost because you have to develop the system, but once you know the process, once you know the system and you know it's proven, I can almost guarantee it works out cheaper than a human, because it's going 24/7. It doesn't need to eat. It doesn't need to sleep. It doesn't need a day off. It's not stuck in traffic. It goes 24/7 because it runs a script, but there's variance that's added into the script by the AI's capacity to be able to either ingest more information with a more varied output, or the ability to make a decision if we've got a multi-step agent sequence, such as we use several different AIs in a row to define what kind of output you're going to get. That might be getting a little bit complicated, but we can talk about it if you want.
So a bunch of invites. That's one of my struggles. Not struggles. It just takes time. I have a target list of individuals I want to reach out to, but then there's a world of people out there who I would be interested in interviewing. I just don't know who they are. But when I use ChatGPT, I'm like, hey, find me some podcast guests that kind of fit these criteria. And ChatGPT does a great job of finding them. And I probably never would have come across them before. Then I take the time. I have a bit of a templated like outreach email, but the first, couple sentences are like, I take a look at their profiles. I see what they're into, making sure, we would align on what this is. But if you could automate that, that's simple and repeatable, and that's what I'm trying to do. Question for you. Is it possible to have a profitable, revenue-producing business that's almost fully AI-driven? I'm talking like 99% AI, 1% I leave the beach 10 minutes a day, check the computer, refresh the screen, and go back to the beach.
Isn't that the dream? some businesses are, I'd say, more like, for example, e-commerce. I think e-commerce businesses are really easily to get to that point where you're sipping pina coladas at 3 p.m. on the beach saying, what a long day of work. Okay, so I think that e-commerce businesses fundamentally right now are maybe the closest type of business to be able to be fully automated because they're consumer facing product businesses. So you go and you buy a product and then later it comes in the mail. Okay. You don't really have too much interaction. It's not like a 2B business where a proposal is made, the ticket price is very high, and there's a lot of backwards and forwards. So that's why I'd probably lean in and say e-commerce businesses are the closest things to being easily fully automated. In terms of other styles of business, it's my goal, actually. My goal within my own organization is to practice what I preach, to automate as much as possible. And believe me, I'm finding new things to automate within my own workflows and systems every day because there's still processes that take too long and they need to scale. They do. We need to scale up. So I saw an interview with the founder of 11 Labs, that for people that don't know, that's an AI voice agent or system whereby you can recreate the sound of your own voice with text inputs, or you can, I think you can create any voice with the text input. You can utilize this tool to make voice from text, okay? It's text to speech, as they'd say. And they said that in their organization, which is a unicorn, they don't have project managers. They just have developers. Now, that's mind-blowing to most people, but I imagine that that is the case within their company because they don't need a project manager if they can develop a system that automatically keeps everybody up to date because they're developers. And in that way, they've kind of, I guess, moved out a product manager or a project manager and given that as a task to software that is governed by an AI. So they do have a project manager, but it's more a project manager that's been created by the team at 11 Labs to self-govern. So almost that they're creating a system that's governing themselves rather than relying on a human to manage the timelines within the business. So we're seeing the merger of roles. I think that's the fundamental point that I'm trying to make there is because we're seeing the merger of roles, we are able to automate more and more and more. And as we automate more and more, one person is now responsible for overseeing lots of different domains. And therefore, we're getting closer to not just easy style of businesses like e-commerce, but all the other kind of businesses. Also, you'll be managing AI as a workforce. That's the terminology. I think there's even SaaS, you know how it's SaaS? Now it's SaaW, which is software as a workforce. So we're able to get the AI to manage these different platforms, and in the sense that people are now saying, we'll give these AI job titles and these AI will work for us as these are different agents that are aligned in the system to be able to work together. And that's how we're going to slowly transition into fully automated businesses. I think people think that one day an AI just comes along and replaces people, but generally that's not how it works. We automate one process with an AI, it works. We automate another. We join these two processes together. Now we've got a whole workflow that's automated. Now we've got one person overseeing maybe 3 or 4 of these workflows, which would usually require 2 people. Now it just requires 1. So we automate ourselves out of the equation.
Fascinating. Several follow-up questions. So without project managers, who's getting you in trouble for missing deadlines? Who's sending the nasty emails?
Yeah, I'll tell you, I'll let everybody in the world know my secret. I have an automated system where if you're late to a meeting, I can record that because I know who's in the Zoom. I can connect it through the API. If you're late, then it will tick a box on an Airtable setup, and it will penalize you in terms of your pay for being late. And it's also adjustable. So depending on your tier, the seniority level within my business, there's a multiplier effect. Actually, it's the opposite of a multiplier, because the top tier get charged the full amount, and then it's on a ratio from there down below. But effectively, nobody needs to send a nasty email because the rules of the system are engineered. So people know if they don't turn up on the Zoom, there's no question. Nobody needs to manage it. It will know that you're not there. So it will tick a box on a spreadsheet that will deduct money from your pay. And the pay, not right now, but very soon, will be automated. So your wage will be automated as well. So we don't need HR and payroll, and we don't need a project manager to make sure people turn up on time. We just need a set of rules for that software ecosystem to be able to govern the people more effectively.
It's really a different way of thinking about work, which is like incredible. How often are people late?
I tell you, more often than I want them to be, but less and less so, because as they realize that you can't make excuses with the rules. Of course, I have the ability to go in there and change a 1 from a 0, if I feel like it's necessary after a conversation, but after a while, the rules are fixed.
Right.
So I think that that's where we're going. People always talk about don't do jobs, tasks, don't have a to-do list, have systems, okay? Manage the systems, not the to-do list. And I've consulted for businesses in the past that really run on a to-do list, even if that to-do list seems to repeat itself several times. And you could write all of that to-do list down and say, as an example, event businesses are a great example because they have a timeline. They have a deadline for when the event is, and then they have a series of things that they would need to do before that event, such as maybe get speakers, sell tickets for the people to come watch the speakers, find a sponsor for the event. These are all things that are generally managed on a sales cycle, on a timeline. So they are things that can, as there's rules, be automated once we think about it at a meta level and view it as a system, not a group of tasks that need to be done. That if you repeat that sales cycle over time in the exact same format, it will produce a very positive response. And in that way, we've turned something from a guessing game where we're just doing tasks into something that creates predictable revenue through having a predictable set of, triggers that create a predictable response. So we're really having to change the way that we see business in 2025 from something where we're doing tasks to how can we systematize everything with a set of rules? Because once we've done that and we've given this machine, this AI, the rules, because it's logic based, it will be able to execute that for us. So I think we're also having to transition away from business in terms of having people be able to make nuanced decisions into really just rule-based systems that can be managed by a team of developers or engineers.
And with that event business, I'm sure event planners, a couple things that would help them do. One, there's probably plenty of them out there that haven't taken the time to even systematize what they do with pen on paper, right? So like every event, they're approaching it as if it's their first event. But just putting those rules in place based on like what a repeatable event would look like is a helpful activity in itself. You automate it and then you get to do other things, and then you can track over time because this is all automated. It's all recorded. There's history right now of, you can look at your reports and see what are the most profitable events, right? Where can I easily trim the fat instead of it being a manual process that might live in Excel or might like live in your bank account or something? It's all going to be in one place where you can assess, are these profitable events? If so, are there more profitable events? Let's do more of the more profitable events, right?
Right. Yeah, you've said it perfectly there. People also, though, fear the way of AI automation, the way of, I should write that as a book, the way of AI automation. People fear it because it usually involves a sunk cost, and that's a sunk cost in either time, such as you're going to try and develop that yourself, or you're going to pay a third party like myself to come in and build you a custom automated system. Okay, so there's sunk cost to it, but people will get their time or their money back. It's it's not a guess. It's not a guessing game. So I encourage everybody to adopt this technology early, ASAP. Make.com. I know I fly the flag a bit too hard. We are an official partner, full transparency of the platform, but I think that people need to adopt this technology. The next wave of this technology is also coming. So I get pretty excited about this, but Model Context Protocol is the next wave of AI architecture. So I mentioned before about retrieval augmented generation. That's where an AI has the capability, an agent has the capability to access a database of information to create its output, its response. Okay, it gives more precision to the output as the agent, the AI, has more context for the answer. But the next stage on top of that is something called Model Context Protocol. The acronym is MCP. And what MCP in effect creates is a server where everything in your organization is connected to it, which permits the AI to be able to read a huge volume of data of your business, map its context, so model the context of your business just through the amount of data and the information that's fed into it, to be able to then extract a contextual output from a range of data sources to give an incredibly precise response. Because imagine you wanted to create an AI CEO. Okay, that CEO has access to finance software, marketing software, sales software. Right now, it would be very difficult to even conceptualize how can we give all of that data to an AI. We can't copy and paste it into ChatGPT. And if we were to do it on technology such as Make.com 6 months ago, you would have to design a database and give these database one by one to the machine, and the machine would then struggle to compute all of that data in a time frame it has to process. But in the Model Context Protocol, that data is being constantly gathered in one place, and the AI has the ability to track the information within the data store, within the vector store, to be able to contextually understand in real time how to respond to a range of different situations. Because of all the information it has access to, it's able to create the context for its output. And that's really where we're going to see AI go. What scares me about this is that we're basically at that point just giving the keys to our business to one of the large language model providers like OpenAI and saying, there you go, run my business, and I'm going to pay you a monthly fee in terms of data processing and tokens. Because once you've given it everything, the capability of the machine and AI is unleashed. It's almost, I don't think we can conceptually think about the benefits of all of it, understanding everything. It might be able to produce quicker and more accurate responses than a human CEO at that point, at least assist them. So that's already available on Make.com and N8N, which is why I said these two platforms are really leading the way, because you can now build that style of AI without the ability to code.
It's incredible.
Let's take a quick break from today's episode. If you're enjoying the conversation, take a second to like, follow, or subscribe wherever you're tuning in. We'd really appreciate it. You can also find us on Instagram at Randall Osché. That's RANDALLOSCHE. And check out more at podcast.randallosché.com, including show notes and other resources from today's episode. All right, back to the conversation.
Like you said earlier, you'll never lose the human touch, right? Because we are emotional creatures and there will be a place for humans. But like, maybe we can spend our time doing more things that we enjoy doing rather than sitting in front of a computer all day long.
I think for some people that will be true. And for other people, there's other things going on in the world. And where are these people going to go? You know, I don't want to be the fearmonger here. I didn't come on to the podcast to scare people. I think the answer to if anybody's scared by what I've said, please go to make.com, NAN, and open AI and learn how to utilize these tools and technologies, because that's what's coming. It's already happened.
Yeah, I was probably late to the party, but I've been using ChatGPT pretty religiously for the last like year and a half. And the more I then used it, because I got better at using it, my prompts improved, and there's some activities that I do for my day job that it reduced my person hours that it would take to create an output, probably from 40 hours to 20 hours. And like, that's just the hours, not like the quality of the output that I'm producing, which also probably increased. So like you said, things are going to change, but it's better to be part of the change than to be left behind. And I think 100%. Then you start to get into some political things and, 4-day, 3-day work days and things like that, and economies. And if you're not making money because you lost your job, how is the government going to run, et cetera, et cetera. Another podcast, a different time.
Yeah, 1 year from now, we'll take a check-in.
Okay, deal. We're going to pause here for a moment. I do find this stuff fascinating. A bunch of questions I want to get to. I want to ask you, maybe this circles back to what we were just talking about, but the future of work. Do you want to give your opinion on what the future of work might look like?
Yeah, shout out to Alex McGregor at this stage. So we have a podcast, me and my friend Alex. It's been up and down over the years. Nothing quite as established as yours, Randall, but we always come down to there's only really going to be 3 roles in the future, 3 functions for humans. Okay, this is maybe my theory, but we fundamentally agree, me and Alex, that there's going to be people who govern AI. They're people like me. They do what I do. They implement AI and integrate AI into people's businesses. There's going to be the business owners, so the people that already have a business that adopt the AI into their business. So they would have the AI as a workforce, so they govern the AI. And then the final category, which is influencers. Beyond that, there's going to be less managers. There's going to be 20% of the managers that you see today still remaining, I think, within the next 2 to 4 years. I think that's the time frame. I don't think it goes beyond that. So I think really there's only 3 roles. So the people that create and build the AI, the people that own businesses that have integrated the AI because they can run faster, more streamlined, quicker and cheaper than all their competitors, and will ultimately win out. And then thirdly, the influencers that presenting, like yourself with the podcast. AI can't replace that. Maybe it will be able to in some way, but people will have an itch for the human touch because they'll miss it, because it will be more rare, it will be less frequent in their day-to-day activity. I mean, how we're going to see the marketplace change, we're probably already seeing it, but voice talking to AI will be integrated into everything. We're already seeing that with Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, with their Meta AI, where they're really encouraging people to do the voice. Now imagine I'm walking down the street, I've got a pair of Google glasses on, I can talk with the Google glasses, it's AR, it's analyzing and telling me everything. It might even recognize people's faces and tell me who they are and their background and give them a rating. All of this is going to come, and I think that people are going to miss the human touch, and there will be an emphasis on very high-end customer service roles. So for wealthy people, they'll have human customer service. For everybody else, we'll just have more and more AI taking those positions. So influencers probably won't be replaced. High-end customer service roles probably not either. But I think we'll see 80% of the roles wiped out within the next 2 to 4 years.
Yeah, that's incredible. Well,
incredible. I feel like I'm going to scare people. You might not release this episode now.
Yeah, I mean, the counter to that I would say is that you're assuming that the people making the decisions in these businesses are logical creatures and they see the value of AI being integrated. Like I said earlier, I had one good manager. There's a lot of dumb people running businesses. There's a lot of dumb CEOs. There's a lot of dumb CROs of software companies. So to this point, right, if every software company was run by a really competent leadership team, executive team, then every software company would become a unicorn, right? That just doesn't happen. There's competing pieces of technology out there. There's competing pieces of software, but like only one of those pieces of software per like niche or sector becomes the unicorn, becomes like the Salesforce, right? That everybody knows and uses and talks about. But there's thousands of CRM companies out there still. Why is Salesforce and everybody else isn't? You know, it's probably a multitude of things, timing, luck, and leadership team, perhaps. But I'll just say it, I feel bad about it, but like there's dumb leaders that make dumb decisions that will continue making dumb decisions, not integrating artificial intelligence into their business to run a more effective and efficient business. For whatever reason, they won't do it.
Yeah, I think the tolerance for mistakes in business is going to decrease because AI will permit dumb leaders to make smarter, logic-based decisions. So I think that there will be less tolerance for mistakes as there will be more of an emphasis on efficiency because of the AI. So that's my first answer. The second answer is Aaron Ross, Tyler Mabeau, the people that are responsible for the sales process at Salesforce, they wrote a book called Predictable Revenue. So I think it was called Cold Calling 2.0 was their system that they actually wrote. And what they emphasized was having a system, and the system comprised of more people to do a single role. So in their former Salesforce process, they would have one person that was responsible for outreach, follow-up, and account management. And what they changed in their management was that they turned that into 3 different roles and streamlined it to make more predictable revenue. So one person was prospecting, another person was then taking the sales call and then closing, and then a third person would do the account management once they were onboarded. Now, I'd also argue that that's a system that now can be replicated with 3 different automated workflows. So your prospecting workflow, your follow-up workflow, and your account management, which currently is probably going to be a human. But what it also shows is that you only need one person now to do 3 roles.
Manage the thing.
Once you've got a system in place. And that's really where we're going to see things move. We're going to see things move to an emphasis on efficiency, so there'll be less mistakes, coupled with a system that can be automated, so that it needs less oversight from a human, even if you need a human in the loop to oversee that workflow or process.
Yeah, that's fair. I've gotten sidetracked in this interview with all the questions just about artificial intelligence. I also want to spend some time talking about you and how you got to this point. So we're going to take a step back here for a moment. How were you? I mean, I don't know when this like AI revolution started. I've only really been on board for the last 18 months, but maybe you can answer that question first of like when was like AI really like a thing that people started to think that it was going to revolutionize how we did business? And then how did you get into this arena?
You know, that is a great question. In 2016, I used to run conferences in machine learning and big data in San Francisco for Google, Microsoft, Netflix, Amazon, and all the big players back then. The whole scene was kind of rudimentary. It's kind of new. People were still using R squared, people were using SQL, Hadoop. TensorFlow was only just coming into the conversation around 2017, which is a Google database of different machine learning algorithms. So the terminology AI wasn't really around then. It was still big data, machine learning, deep learning. These were the terminologies that people were actually discussing what is now the foundation of AI as we know it today. So I jumped into it about 11 years ago. Is that right? No, 9 years ago. 9 years ago. Sorry, terrible maths. I rely too much on AI. But the situation was that I was going to these amazing events. I was organizing these amazing events in San Francisco, in Boston, in the US with all these big players. And I just knew at the time. I knew at the time that the application was going to change, because even back in 2017, the technology to analyze tons of different images like facial recognition and find patterns within those faces was there. It was in deep learning phase. It was incredibly expensive. These corporations were really the only people that had the power to do that. And what's really happened in the last 9 years is as these corporations have taken ownership of building these large language models, they've also democratized that to the consumer masses to make money. And that's what OpenAI did. I mean, there's a lot of dispute and discussion around OpenAI doing that, as they initially had launched as a not-for-profit open foundation. And I've seen that people quote that Sam Altman has stole the internet and is selling it back to us.
Fair. I don't fault him for that, but like that's a nice way to put it.
So yeah, to answer your question, I first got involved in the space 9 years ago. Then I went into a bunch of other stuff. So I was working for Walmart in China in e-commerce. And China is the leader of e-commerce globally. Their system is heavily digitized. Their adoption of technology is way beyond anything that you generally see in the West. They're like 70-year-old grandmas are using touch phones easily. And it's because all the technology is made there very cheaply. So their level of adoption is way higher than in the West. I think even in 2016, 80% of all online transactions happened on the mobile phone. But that was nowhere near that figure in 2016 in outside of China. That was in China. And right now they've really got a cashless society, a full cashless society right now in China. So I moved to go work in the e-commerce space for Walmart. I ended up then doing global marketing for a very large telephone communications company. And then I went to work with maybe the, I guess, second most famous e-commerce business in the world, Alibaba. Okay, so I went to work for Alibaba in e-commerce, and then I left. And now the reason that I got back into the AI is quite interesting. Because the adoption of technology in China is generally way higher than the West, though people wouldn't think it. They're really much more digitally native as a peoples than anywhere outside of China. Again, because all the technology is made there, so it's cheaper and more affordable and therefore more accessible to people, so they can adopt it quicker. ChatGPT or AI has one of the highest adoption rates is in China. So I used to run a business after I left Alibaba that was doing marketing for Chinese companies. And what I noticed was that they were adopting ChatGPT very fast because it was an equalizer. Jake is expensive because he speaks English natively. So why don't we just hire a young person in China and give them an AI that's cheaper than Jake? Because we don't need to rely on Jake's ability to speak English natively anymore. So I first saw ChatGPT was hitting my cash flow. And one time I was speaking at a conference in Singapore about this technology, about automating with AI, because I got really heavily into the automation process with AI about 2 years ago. And someone came up to me and was like, well, why don't you just do that full time? Now, at the time, I didn't have the necessity to do it because I was living nice based upon my e-commerce agency to help these brands position and create their position in different markets, okay? But then once my market share was being eaten alive by ChatGPT, I realized the necessity to go full into this, fully automate my own business, which I did, and then I started selling those solutions to similar style of agencies. And that's how Stob.AI came into existence. Really now for about, I guess, 18 months full time on Stob.AI. Yeah.
How long ago was it when you started to notice that AI was eating into your business at the time?
2023, so early 2023.
Not that long ago.
Yeah, 2 years. So I used to work with Alex McGregor. I think I just mentioned that guy already on the podcast, but he's a copywriter. He also worked in copywriting, and suddenly people aren't picking up the phone to ask him to write as much because they've got access to a tool that does the heavy operations of lifting for them. Back then, there was still like, it was a source of truth, and AI did hallucinate more, much more than it does now. So people would use ChatGPT and think that everything that they got in the article was a legitimate fact. But they still used that over somebody that had 10 plus years of copywriting and research experience. So it was at that point in 2023 that both myself and my associate, because we were working on some projects together, realized we are going to have to change. Like, we knew back in early 2023 that we were going to have to change, because fundamentally we had started to utilize it and our customers had started to utilize it. And effectively at that point we could produce more or less the same quality of results, which then impacted obviously our cash flow negatively.
What types of businesses do you typically work for? Agencies, you said, or what's your sweet spot?
You know, a lot of people in this space have a sweet spot. We don't. And I have my own philosophy of why I don't do that. And it's one of those points of discussion that I want people to challenge me on. But the reason why I don't niche down and say, right, we're just going to do real estate companies from now on, is because I think that the AI will move into AGI, in the sense that it will have the capability to be able to generally perform across all of these different divisions. Now, every industry has its own unique challenges. Now, from a business operator's point of view, people go, well, you can niche down on that problem, you can resolve that one niche and repeat, rinse and repeat, and it's more scalable. However, I'm not really interested in just niching down. I don't need to, because I think that the real beauty of the AI isn't necessarily in the actual fundamental process around one thing, but it's the way in which the architecture of the business can be built. There's different tricks and techniques to be able to build this infrastructure. And I'm much more focused on building the infrastructure than I am to rinse and repeat a set of workflows that might not fit into every business. So once we work with the project, I'll give you an example, because we had a guy in New York called Greg who has built a real edge case for what this technology can do. It actually, if you attend his webinar, you will register with your email. It might be your personal email. His system will database your email, enrich that data. It will go to your LinkedIn profile. It will go to your website. It will scrape all of the information from your website. So he targets venture capital backed startups. Now, venture capital backed startups usually have a positioning problem. And the reason they have a positioning problem is they might have an idea, but the communication of that idea, it takes time and testing in the market to get the fit. What his solution does, or what he sells people, is he sells people, I'll help you find your position within this 90-day integrated sprint, okay? But to sell them that as a ticket, what we've designed for him is a machine that will read the website, read the LinkedIn, find the positioning problems on the website and the LinkedIn without my client having to read the website. And then it will tell them, here's all the things that you should resolve. I can help you do that because I've already read and know everything about what you're trying to achieve and the issues within your website. Now, some people might say they might have some sort of concern that that's not necessarily the most ethical because my client hasn't necessarily done that research. The AI did that research. But actually, I will, in defense, as the defense, I won't say lawyer, I don't want to end up in any litigation here, but as in defense of my client, it's a very smart application of the AI.
Yeah, to be funny, I also don't want to end up in any litigation, but Greg might not know shit about shit when it comes to the business. However, in this evolving landscape of business, he has the skill set, which is leveraging the AI and you to create this service that he is then selling. He's not wrong about what he's doing. It's just work reimagined the way we've been talking about it. It's a different skill set. Like, Greg doesn't have to be a subject matter expert on whatever they're doing. He just has to be able to identify what they're missing in the market, their messaging, and fix it. And if he can use AI better than the businesses in present, there's nothing wrong with that, in my opinion.
It's like Rick Rubin. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Rick Rubin, but he's a producer that can't play any musical instruments, but he can understand what the market will be receptive to. So in that sense, that's what his value offer is. It's not something that, you could quantify maybe. I mean, people do, right? Record labels do. They listen to what people are listening to, and then they produce music that has effectively all the trends of the moment. Rick Rubin is the human touch, but he can identify a trend before it's happened, and he taps into it. He doesn't necessarily need to be able to play any of the instruments to help people make a hit song. He just needs to understand what the market want and know enough about the ecosystem to be able to help the artist.
I had a conversation with somebody the other day, not necessarily about AI, but they were talking to me about like navigating their career, and they're at the bottom of an organization and they have a little bit of imposter syndrome, thinking that they can't rise to the top of the organization. And I was like talking to them about this, and we were having a conversation, and her opinion was that she needs to become a subject matter expert on all these other levels between like where she's at and the head of the organization, that like skip ahead to the head of the class, right? And I was talking to her, it's like, you don't need to do that. And ChatGPT gave me this example because I was having a hard time like getting her to understand like what my point was. And ChatGPT said it's like a conductor of an orchestra where you don't need to know how to play the instruments. You just have to be able to put the instruments together in a harmony. And that's value. Like a conductor might not need to know how to play any of the instruments, but he has to keep everybody in harmony to produce something that pleases your ears. But you don't need to be an expert in all those areas.
Right. And full circle, what we do at Stob.AI is we're the conductor of the AI to play all of the pieces of software in your business. If the software is the different people within the orchestra, the double bass, the trumpet, whatever your orchestra is made of, those are different acting AI agents. And we design a system, which is probably the musical notes on the sheet, that you can conduct amongst the AI that run your business. So yeah, I love that analogy.
Yeah, not even planned, but that worked out really well. A couple other questions. What's the most influential book you've ever read?
Oh, actually, I can answer that immediately. Felix Dennis, How to Get Rich. Do you know this one?
I haven't heard of it, nor read it.
Okay, well, it's not a common one, and it was given to me by my optician, the optometrist, back in my hometown. And Felix Dennis was the founder and creator of Maxim magazine. He did this in like the late 80s, early 90s. He rose to $400 million. And when he died, he gave it all away, gave everything away. I think testament to the kind of character that he actually was. He lived a very wild life, got obscenely rich, but it took his toll. But one thing that he never really gave up was his character. He was very influenced by poetry and art in his expression. And that book influenced me a lot. That would be one of the most influential books. And I think also because, not that I would want to be like Felix Dennis, but I have such an admiration of him being able to go through a lot of different circumstances to basically go from nothing on this journey that's not linear and become something and still maintain his character to give away his empire once it was all finished. And I don't know, maybe there's something sentimental or something about that story that really grips me, but that one of the most influential books. Not only does it teach you his thought process of how he built his business empire, it's not an instruction manual of how to get rich. It's more like an autobiography and a list of warnings about why you should not attempt to become rich. Yeah.
I love that. I think I have maybe listened to that on Audible. It sort of rings a bell. What's one piece of advice you would give your younger self?
Oh, you've got me stumped. I mean, it wouldn't be anything technical. It would be, more about a mode of behavior. You grow up, right, and you learn, and the world becomes bigger. And I guess in some essence, you could argue that some people have a head start with, you could frame it as cultural capital. People can acquire cultural capital, which is a framework, a modality, is etiquette, as the French would say, about how to behave in certain situations. So the advice to my younger self would really be more of a framing for the world. But that's only contextual to what I understand now and not the person that I was when I was growing up. I wish then that I know what I know now, right? That's how the old statement goes.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And for our listeners, where can they go find what you do or find you if they want to reach out?
Yeah, everybody's welcome to reach out. I mean, you could have 1 million followers and that might be a mistake, but you can Google my name, JakeHissitt, and you'll probably find a bunch of contact points there. Probably some that I won't contact you back on, probably like personal stuff like my Instagram and Facebook, but Stob.AI, Stob.AI, bots spelt backwards, BOTS, STOB.AI.
Very clever.
Yeah, well, it kind of started as a side project, if I'm honest. I don't usually tell people that, so you've got the scoop on this podcast, but I actually started it as a Shopify to sell the automation templates or to list all the automation templates as I was making YouTube videos. And then these YouTube videos gained a bit of traction. And then I realized that I should listen to those people telling me that I should go all in on the AI automation and stop doing the direct consumer e-commerce business that I was fully in. And there was a few painful months in there where I had to stop what I was used to doing and start a new style of business that I'd never done before. So there was a lot of learning in between. But STOB was it wasn't something that was planned.
Yeah. I think some of the best things in my career and life haven't been planned either, probably for most people as well. But Jake Hissit, thank you for the extra time today. It was a great interview. I learned a lot. I'm sure my listeners have learned a lot as well. We're going to circle back in a year and talk about this artificial intelligence revolution, and hopefully I still have a job by then.
Touch wood.
All right.
Okay. Thank you, Randall. It's been a pleasure.
And that wraps up today's conversation on the Randall Osché Podcast. Thanks again to our guest for sharing their time, knowledge, and lessons with us. If the episode brought you any value, the best way to support the show is to follow or subscribe on your favorite platform. That helps us reach more people like you. You can also visit podcast.randalloshay.com for blog posts, full transcripts, and other episode resources. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time, stay sharp, stay curious, and keep moving forward.